The cancer experience taught me a great deal and moved me along on being a Christian feminist and a feminist Christian.
Welcome to Cancer Talks, a podcast sharing personal stories of transformation from people whose lives have been touched by cancer. Our guest is Reverend Nancy McKay, a feminist Christian minister in the United Church of Christ who offers spiritual direction. Nancy taught healing prayer for years, and these days she participates in expressive writing classes. Nancy attended the first Healing Journeys conference in 1994 and has been committed to that work ever since. This conversation will be guided by Cheryl Buck.
Nancy, welcome to Cancer Talks. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. It is good to be here.
I thought we'd start with something that has been a part of your life for many, many years. I think since the 1980s is what you said. And it's something that I've just learned about, and it's called one's social location. And so I'd love for you to say kind of the origin, I guess, of that concept. And then if you would be ever so kind as to tell me your social location as a way of introducing you to our audience.
Good. Yes, I was in seminary, and one of the tools of biblical scholarship is to look at the text in a sociological way. So, where is this person in society? Are they at the bottom of society? Are they in the middle? Are they at the top? Is this a king? Is this a peasant? Is this someone who is part of an alien group? Male, female, what your age is, all of that, which we kind of take for granted now, was applied to biblical scholarship for the first time, and people in the 20th century, and it opened up the scriptures a great deal. Not everybody agreed, but of course that's the fun of it.
Right.
My own social location, I'm a white woman, a widow, 82 years old, living in a continuing care retirement center. I have an independent apartment and with a cat. My meals are prepared. I go downstairs. During the pandemic, they were delivered to us. It is a community far more than I knew it would be. I'm part of the middle class, well-educated strand or stratum of society, Protestant and feminist. And that puts me in a smaller category, but one that is growing.
Yes. And we're both smiling at each other as you said that.
And also social location. This is a concept that is beginning to move in the American society, particularly in the progressive area, particularly among white people who are taking seriously all that is meant by Black Lives Matter, and seeing that whiteness is not the norm and everybody else is different or deviant from that, but that whiteness is a culture.
Yes.
And so when I gave my social location, I think the first thing I said was that I was white.
You did, yes.
And this, I think, is a very healthy strain in the dialogue within the United States. There's much that upsets me, But this is a part that gives me hope.
Yes, it's very powerful.
It is.
Let's talk about your early life. I'd love to know where you were born, what was family life like when you were a child. And this is actually what I understand to be part of social location. Is there a distinctive piece of your upbringing that shaped your identity?
Okay. I was born in the Hollywood Hospital,
Whoa.
and that impresses young girls in Ireland. My parents were living in a bedroom community of Los Angeles, Glendale, which was a sundown law town, which meant that no person of color could be in the city limits after the sun went down. It was illegal. You could be arrested.
Are you saying this is
So it
Hollywood,
was a very,
California? Hollywood,
no,
California?
Glendale, California.
Glendale, California. But in California,
Yes.
there was a sundown.
In California, oh, there were many. There were many sundown cities.
And what decade was this,
And
Nancy?
so I was born in 1938.
So the 30s.
So the war years were my formative years. Rationing was part of my growing up. Everybody working for a common cause, winning the war, supporting the troops, the boys.
Right.
That was part of my early business. Within the family, I am the third of three girls, and my father desperately wanted a boy, and he did not get one. And when I was born, as the doctor caught me coming out of my mother's body, he announced another no account girl.
Ooh,
That's bad enough, but they did not need to tell me that.
right.
I did not need to know that. But I was literally born into sexism
Yes.
and in the feminine being discounted, quite literally discounted, a no account girl.
Who told you that
So
the doctor had said that?
I
Your
cannot
parents?
remember.
You don't remember? Okay.
My parents, oh yes, whether it was both of them or the same, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
But that was part of the family story.
Were they making light of it or making a joke of it, or at that point after you were
No,
a child?
my father was very upset that he did not have a son and he would not have a son.
Yes.
Mother was too old to have another baby. And no, that was
Yeah.
the legacy of mid 20th century America. I don't think it's really unusual. It doesn't mean that my father didn't love me. He grew to love me. I did everything possible to make him love me. And it's a real recipe to develop a codependent people pleaser,
Yes.
which I excelled in. I knew I had to excel in everything.
Yes.
I throw a baseball like a boy, and used to be proud of that. Used to be, but I grew up in a bubble, really, and then I went to the University of California at Berkeley, and the whole world opened up.
Yes. And that was in the 50s?
Yes, that was in the late 56 to 60.
Wow.
And English major straight through, but I got to meet people in many different social locations.
Yes.
Not the full spectrum because they were still, involved in the university. They had enough money to be there
Yes.
and the leisure time they did. So, but yes, and particularly many ideas, whole thought systems. And I lost the very passionate, idealistic Christianity of my teenage years. And it just disappeared. No big events, it just faded. And I became not really so much an atheist as an agnostic. I just didn't know.
Right.
But I didn't think that there could be a God because there was so much suffering in the world.
Yes.
So how could this possibly be a good God?
Yes.
And what's the use of a God if it's not a good God?
Right. So tell me what it was like. Paint a picture of what was happening in Berkeley, California, at Cal, or University of California at Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what was happening in the 50s and how much you participated.
Well, the 50s, I entered in 56, and the year before was the last of the panty raids. And when, yeah, panty raids.
Oh my God.
Fraternity boys stealing, going to sororities and stealing underwear.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, not exactly enlightened behavior, but
That's the way it
Cal
was.
was famous for it.
Mm.
Yes, I also, that year, the faculty had just won the free speech. That faculty had free speech to teach what they knew and what they thought. And it was in the loyalty oath that this came out, that in these were McCarthy days, and Red Scare and Nixon and the House Un-American Activities Committee. And every faculty member was supposed to sign an oath that said they were loyal to the government of the United States of America. Faculty said, no,
Wow.
I don't need to sign an oath. You don't need to have a wedge, a crowbar that you can use against me if you want to, and say I'm disloyal for thinking something or saying something. And the faculty had fought that and fought that and fought that and won.
Mm-hmm.
And so the campus was on the verge of something.
Yes.
And then came, a couple of years later, came Mario Savio standing on the car top, speaking passionately, brilliantly, and the free speech movement came into being.
Yes. Wow.
Not without some violence, unfortunately. It was a time of ferment. It was a time, I married in 1960, a student at Cal, and we stayed on in Berkeley. In fact, I lived in Berkeley for the next 58 years. So saw quite a few changes.
Yes.
Saw the integration of the schools,
Mm-hmm.
or the attempted integration. It still is nowhere near done. But I remember that day the buses rolled, and I had tears streaming down my face. We didn't have children yet, but here was one community trying to do right.
Yes.
And I was very proud and very hopeful
Yes.
and very naive
Mm-hmm.
as to what it would take.
Did you participate in any way? Were you? Did you go to one of
Not
Mario
really.
Savio's? Uh-huh.
No. I knew him at the co-op grocery store. We shopped at the same grocery store. And sometimes I would be in line with him.
You
But
never said
no.
hi. Thanks for
He
what
was
you're
a
doing.
nice. Oh yeah, I did. Yeah,
Oh, good.
I did. He was a very sweet man.
Aw.
He died much too early.
Yes. Yes.
No, I was not really involved.
Yeah.
Had opinions, but wasn't involved.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Then, 12 years later, you were still living in Berkeley, and your father passed away at a young age,
Well, he was 70.
70. Well, yes, to me, that's young.
Yeah.
That's my
Then
age.
it wasn't, now it is.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
And you started to go to church again. Can you talk about that?
I'd be very happy to talk about that. I did love my father very much. We argued on many social location issues, but I loved him and he loved me, and we had a grand time together. We had a lot of fun. And it was really, really hard when he died. And about 2 months afterwards, I'd gotten into bed and I had a pre-verbal worry. A feeling came up, and that feeling was asking the question, is Daddy all right? And that made absolutely no sense to my rational mind. I thought death was just the end, and that could be no all right or not all right. And into that deep feeling of grief, I heard a strong male voice say, "Your father is with me." And I felt warmth held in every cell and a sense of well-being. And that has not lost. I have not lost that. I turned to my husband and I said, "Did you hear anything?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, I did." And my life pivoted
Wow.
at that point.
That's fascinating?
And within 2 months, I was back going to church in the congregational heritage, which was mine.
Yes, yes.
And
You said that they welcomed your doubts and your questions. You told me that.
yes,
that-
oh, I was so fortunate. Yes. And when I was asked if I was going to join the church by one of the ministers, and I said, "No, I don't have enough faith to do that." And he said, "Well, come along with us. We are all developing faith.
That's
None
beautiful.
of us have
Yes.
enough." And it was the inclusive spirituality that I needed. And it wasn't a dogmatic church. It was more an inspirational church.
So then deciding to go to seminary then actually makes sense with that kind of a church background that you were coming from.
It did. It
So
did.
you joined the seminary, is that how you say it? Joined? Or
No, you enroll. You enroll.
It's a school.
Yeah, it's like enrolling in a college. It's
Got
a
it.
school.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't live there. I lived at home.
Uh-huh.
I was fortunate enough. There are a whole constellation of seminaries in Berkeley, what they called Holy Hill.
Ah.
And that was, I had the support of the congregation, and I was scared to death that raising two kids, my mind had gone to mush, and that these new kids were so bright. Well, they could memorize much better than I could, but I could think circles around them. And that was just being 40 years old.
Yes.
It just, the life experience and the way the brain develops. So that was a good experience.
Yes, yes. Yeah, well, at some point you became an ordained minister and a pastor.
I did. Yes, 3 years. And the last year I did my field education at a little church in El Cerrito, just north of Berkeley.
Yes.
And the United Church of Christ, which is the congregational iteration now. I was there for the whole school year before, and then the minister said he wanted to go back to school and would I like to share one position. And we worked it out, and we were co-pastors for a while. And then his life hit some really hard bumps, and he resigned, and I became the solo pastor and was in that capacity for 9 years.
Wow.
So I was doing it all. I was leading the youth group. I was training the Sunday school teachers. I was making pastoral calls. I was doing weddings, funerals, and of course, Sunday morning services,
Yes.
preaching, and meetings. Church people love to have meetings, meetings. And I developed in that a way of setting up a church meeting so that it was more than just a meeting. I had learned to make altars, like a centering piece. My mother made centerpieces for a dinner party, and these I made arrangements with a scarf or a placemat and a few beautiful objects, and usually a candle, that would remind us of how God functions.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful Rorschach kind of test. I build one on the table of a church council meeting and then say, how does this remind you of God? And at first they were stunned. They just sat there like, Nancy, what are you doing? And then they got into it. And it was wonderful. I think the best church council we ever had was one day when I put a placemat, a bowl of water, and a candle. And we talked about baptism.
Wow.
And we went much deeper than we ever would have with any kind of lesson plan.
Yes.
It was spontaneous and wonderful. And I really believe that I believe in the power of a group. If they honor each other, that there is tremendous wisdom
Yes.
and comfort and motivation in a group. It's that horizontal sense of leadership instead of the top-down patriarchal. It's much more a feminine, shared circle kind of leadership.
That's beautiful.
And I found it harder and harder to live in a patriarchal church. And God knows Christianity is patriarchal. Most of it, not all of it.
Not all of it.
And it's changing, and I think for the better. I tried to introduce gender-inclusive language to the church in the mid-'80s. And we were dealing with the AIDS epidemic. And what was the helpful, loving role of the church in that, vis-a-vis all of the bigotry and hard dogma against homosexual experience.
Yes.
And I had a better time opening up people's hearts to the AIDS crisis than I did opening up people's hearts to gender-inclusive language, where you drop the male pronouns because they really do not much of the time include the feminine people. And also language for God. Do you want half a God or do you want a whole God? Do you want a bigger God? And people just, that was blasphemy. No. And I was kind of bruised and battered when I left, but I loved those people.
Yes.
And they loved me.
Yes.
And I was saying that when I left, that if I was going to remain a feminist in the church, I was going to have to develop a thicker hide because I got hurt.
Yes.
I really got hurt. And I know I hurt people. I did not do it as well as I would like. So I said I needed a thicker hide. Well, I did not need a thicker hide. I needed a more articulated core. I needed to be able to have the courage to speak what I truly felt and let the chips fall gently, but still fall where they may.
Yes.
And the cancer experience taught me a great deal.
Tell me.
And moved me along on being a Christian feminist and a feminist Christian.
Wow. Fascinating. You were and are a pioneer. I mean, this story is
I was.
amazing.
Far more than I had thought
Yes.
I was. And But let me read you the poem. I wrote a poem fairly soon, within the first year after my cancer diagnosis.
Okay.
In 1993, I was diagnosed, and it began a wild ride. This poem is called It Was Another Woman. And of course, that has imagery
Yes,
and
definitely.
suggestiveness. It
Yes.
was another woman. It was another woman who answered the phone. Yes, doctor. Yes, yes, yes. That's life-threatening, isn't it? I see. How long? Months? A year, 2 at the most? I see. Thank you, doctor. No, don't worry. It's all right. I know you are. It was another woman who hung up the phone. My God. Oh, melanoma. Oh, my God. He held her tight, squeezing out the words and sobs, the gulps for air. Oh, I don't believe it. It was another woman who believed it. No known treatment. We can clean out the lymph nodes. How do we tell the girls? My sister, I can't. You do it. Just hold me. I don't want to do this. It was another woman who disbelieved it. CT is clear, except for those lymph nodes. Then Jesus said, I will give you rest. And the double take came. What kind? Eternal? No. Follow me. You're the best thing in sight. Shall I give you your life? Just like that? Have it. It was another woman who began to breathe again. May I have a healing? Right here, right now? No, you have to live it. Oh, may I have a healing image? I hate all the battle stuff. I don't want all that carnage left in me. A soap bubble came, shimmery, wobbly, iridescent gold and aqua and fuchsia in the light. Rising from her shoulders, back and head, bubbles, bubbles, bubbles. Inside each one, a cancer cell. When they cleared her body, pop and poof, bubble and cell, softly gone. It was another woman who tried everything. Scalpel and hospital, Chinese herbs, beta-carotene, and experimental vaccinations. Guided images, hypnotic tapes, and journaling. Miracles lined up behind each setback. People prayed and said so. Pelicans flew. T-cells woke up and went to work. It is another woman who knows she is healing.
Ooh, that's that is so beautiful.
Thank you.
It's very moving, and I know you read that the poem that you just read at a Healing Journeys conference.
I did.
I can imagine as I'm sitting here in tears that audience must have been so moved by what you wrote, by reading it the way you
They
read
were.
it. It's beautiful. They were, yes. Wow.
Yeah. It was in 95,
95.
and it was the third the third Healing Journeys conference. I had gone to the first one in Monterey, the first one ever. A friend of mine was very intuitive, and she had picked up a brochure for this brand new thing that was happening, and she handed it to me and she said, "Go." And I
you
trusted her.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
That was one of your best
did, and
decisions, right?
It was. It truly was. When we trust, decision making and trust are fascinating topics. That would take us on a nice tangent, but I think we maybe. Although it's an important decision making for treatment and decision making for attitude and for people to accompany you.
Yes.
Are all part of the cancer journey.
Yes.
And I developed it. I didn't develop it. It came to me. It's not really a poem. It's closer to doggerel, but it goes like this. It's the only one I've ever memorized. When you are diagnosed, become diagonal. When you are prognosed, become protagonal. And when you are healed, be helium.
Oh.
And
I
that,
love that.
taking charge of your
Yes.
own is the protagonal. You get to make up words. And the diagonal, it takes you in a direction that you had not intended.
Yes.
And some people can't go along with you. They drop off.
Yes.
But you meet far more wonderful people who can go with you
That's right.
when you go diagonally.
Yes. Oh. That's such beautiful imagery, Nancy. Wow.
Good. Well, I do have one more. Let's just roll them.
Okay.
This is called Awareness Came. Awareness came with the subtlety of passing days. No phone call, no finishing line, no off-on switch from dark to bright. When proceeding day by day, how to grasp a month gone. By 23 months, I could claim, if it doesn't come back right away, you've got it, you've won. Awareness of my diagnosis abides. Every day and several times a day, I confront the melanoma reality. I had it. It's a killer. I had it. No one escapes forever. I will die one day. Not today, thank you. I'm still saying thank you. May they be my last words.
On a day-to-day basis now, obviously you've been healed for a long time. Where is cancer in your life now? Do you remember having it? Do you think about it?
Yes, I'm reminded. I think about it as I hear about it or confront it in other people. I live with 150 senior citizens. Cancer is not very far away. There are people here who are dying from it, who are in hospice. There are people who are afraid of it. There are people who have been widowed by it, men and women. There are people who worry about themselves or their children. I was talking to a man after dinner last night, and he was telling me about his 40-year-old son who had just completed radiation treatments. And as people know that I had cancer and survived it, obviously, they want to tell me about what they're going through. And I think that is part one. I'm an introvert and I prefer to listen. You wouldn't believe it today, but I prefer to listen rather than talk. And the chief learning I had from the whole cancer experience is that Nancy McKay can no longer say she isn't loved. I am loved.
Yes.
I got it.
Yes.
That is the great lasting gift
Yes.
for me of cancer. Not everybody comes to that, and I hope and pray that more people do.
Yes.
It's possible, but yeah, I am loved.
Yes. That's beautiful.
I also have been on the other side. My husband was extremely supportive when I was in cancer treatment, in particular. He also died of cancer 3 years ago, and he had the opportunity to actually wipe out, destroy, become clear, no evidence of disease, the first cancer. But it had metastasized, and then he got another one, and then it was 2 months in hospice. And I cannot say enough for hospice. It is so helpful.
Yes.
Helped him deal with his emotions, and most men are not terribly good at expressing or reflecting. Some are magnificent, but most are not. And really helped medically, helped emotionally, helped me physically. And there's a particular closeness that can happen between a couple, even when they've been married as 58 years. We were almost 60. We were a month shy of 60. And can be a turning point. And Lawrence LeShan's book, Lawrence LeShan's book called Cancer as a Turning Point is really a classic. And I wish it would get a revival.
The turning point, yes. Isn't that part of what Healing Journeys called?
Right.
The conferences.
The conferences were called Cancer as a Turning Point.
Yes.
With LeShan's blessing. And he spoke a couple of times, different times.
I didn't know that.
I remember singing happy birthday to him for his 80th birthday down at Stanford.
Yes.
At a big conference. And he died last fall at 100.
Wow.
But a marvelous legacy of using cancer, any diagnosis, as what is the opportunity here?
Yes. Yes.
What can be learned? What can be healed emotionally as well as physically?
Yes.
Spiritually.
So you were chairman of the board of Healing Journeys for 7 years.
Yes.
Officially.
I was.
Yeah. So you have been
officially
deeply involved.
Yes.
And Healing Journeys they did, I think it's something like 37 conferences on cancer over 25 years. Made a huge impact and continue to in what they're doing now since the pandemic and no more conferences. So do you think they'll carry on with
I hope so.
different programs?
And you are carrying on the same message that healing is possible. Support is here. You're not alone. It's good to hear healing stories.
Yes.
It's good to know how other people, you may not follow exactly what they do, but it's good to know what they have done.
That's right.
And how they have held things and how opportunities have opened up.
Yes. That's right.
Cancer is not a dead end.
Yes.
It's not a blind alley.
Yes.
There's growth.
Yes.
Whether you live or whether you die,
Yes. Exactly.
there's possibility for growth and love for everyone. And particularly the medical community.
What do you mean by that? Say more about that.
What I mean by that is 30 years ago, 40 years ago, doctors were so focused on preserving life, extending life, and seeing only the physical, mechanical aspects of the body.
Yes.
Instead of seeing how other things influence the way that mechanical business works. That prayer has tremendous relaxation and trusting and sense of well-being and offloading one's anger, offloading one's grief in a safe place, not dumping it on your family.
Right.
That imagery really does change things. The way we think, and we're learning more and more about the brain and how the brain is plastic. It can change, it can adapt. And thinking makes it so. How we hold things are really important.
Yes.
At a conference, we had half patients and anyone who had experienced a diagnosis, and we had a quarter of people were support people, usually family, friends, and a quarter were medical people, usually nurses.
Interesting.
Seldom did a doctor come. And there is certainly a movement within nursing that is holistic and that understands that it's more than just chemistry and physics.
Yes.
And I think in our small way, we have encouraged, we have given information, we have lived out, we have been examples that we are whole people and need to be treated as whole people, literally treated as whole people. And that was one of Jan's goals, was to influence. And we've been part of a movement that is gaining strength as we speak.
Yes. How would you describe that movement?
Person-centered, that it's patient-centered and looks, hospice does a great job in that they look not just at drugs and hospital beds, but they look at the emotional, they look at the meaning part. If people can find meaning, they're going to do so much better.
Yes.
They're going to feel better. They're going to be able to do more. And that used to be never considered. What was the meaning of my cancer? Well, you're having trouble being a feminist in the church, and you say you need a thicker hide. And no, you didn't need a thicker hide. You didn't need skin cancer, deadly skin cancer. You needed a more articulated core. And that I am still working on. The poems are part of that.
Yes.
And I hope to have a wee book out at some point
What's a
about
wee
the
book?
reemergence of the divine feminine. A small.
Oh, a small, a W-E-E
Not a
book.
hugely
Okay.
ambitious book.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Sorry
I
for that
like
little
that. It
interlude
could be
there.
a wee book. That's fine. I love it. A wee book.
Okay, and the wee book, or the wee book, however you want to say it, and what will it be about? You say that again?
It will be about the reemergence of the divine feminine and my healing from cancer.
Wow. Please write that book.
Thank you. I will.
Can I ask you something which I think may apply to what you just said? Something that you and I had talked about, that you said when we first talked, you said that you went from, as we heard you say, a no account girl to Sophia, goddess of wisdom. And
Yes.
are you referring to Lady Sophia?
I am referring to, in the Old Testament, the Jewish scriptures, which it's written in Greek. The Greek word for wisdom is Sophia.
Uh-huh.
And in the book of Proverbs, it is wisdom, and it's a figure as a woman who is the co-creator with the Hebrew God, Yahweh, or the Lord. And it's a joint project. And there are traces of that in Genesis. And made in our image, male and female.
Interesting.
There are two creation stories in Genesis.
Wow.
Adam and Eve is the more recent, but the really ancient one. It's co-creators creating in their image. And it's in the New Testament, in the prologue to the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and that can be translated, in the beginning was the wisdom. Logos can go there. And then it's very similar to the Genesis story.
Fascinating.
So it's in both, it's kind of hidden, and I think there are more and more, particularly women, but also some men. You can have a Y chromosome or not have a Y chromosome and still be a feminist, still want a balanced Godhead, still want equity.
Yes.
And the richness of both. It's both and. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did way more. That is
Okay.
thought-provoking, and it makes absolute sense to me. It's beautiful. It's exquisite. I mean, it's it shifted my thinking. Let me put it that way. The way I don't even know how to describe it, but you created a real opening for me to be in.
I'm so glad. Yay.
Yay. That's my favorite word.
That is a blessing. Yes.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave a review in your podcast app. Cancer Talks is a platform for anyone who has been touched by cancer. Go to cancertalks.com/mystory to join the conversation. If you're moved to donate, please visit patreon.com/cancertalks. This podcast was produced by Claire DeLaslo and Annie Mernigan. Annie also provided original music for the episode. As always, we want to extend special thanks to our donors, friends, and volunteers. We couldn't do this without you.